Brilliant. Right, I think we'll make a start. So welcome to this talk as part of the Leeds Digital Festival. So this is the community CPR about reviving the heartbeat of your community of practice. Unfortunately, Rich couldn't make it this morning, so you just got me, Sinead Torley. I'm a Principal Business Analyst Consultant for Herd Consulting. I've got experience of conducting community of practice health checks with other organisations on behalf of Herd. I've also championed community of practices in the past, and earlier this year I founded the Cumbrian BA network locally, so a community of practice for my profession. We'll have time hopefully at the end for a bit of discussion and Q&A, so if you've got any questions as we go along, if you just pop them in the chat and we'll address them at the end. Just quickly introduce Herd for those aren't aware. So we're an award-winning product analysis, change and transformation consultancy, and we're proud to be trusted by global leading universities, central government departments and FTSE 100 companies, as well as some fast-growing tech businesses. And most clients come to us when they may be starting something new, or they need help getting back the delivery back on track. They want to deliver something, or they're looking to grow their in-house capability. And if you want to find out more about us, we've got our website, or we're on LinkedIn, or you can email us at hello@herd.consulting as well. So make a start. So what is a community of practice health check? And probably just to get us all on the same page, when I'm referring to a community of practice, I mean a group of people that maybe share a common interest or a passion for a particular topic or profession. So this might be your team or a group of teams if you've got a larger organisation, or it could be a network or a group outside of work. But it's where people come together and knowledge share and learn from each other and improve their skills through regular interaction with that community. So I'm going to start a bit of audience participation, and I'm just going to ask you to pop in the chat what kind of comes to mind when you hear health check. And Dan's going to help me out by shouting some out so I don't have to toggle between my screens. So this could be medical terms, doesn't have to be just work terms.
Sure. So we've got someone going straight to checking biometrics against what they should be. So sort of anticipation of a baseline there of what good looks like. Taking a pulse as well. So sticking with that medical theme. Yeah,
and you will notice that throughout this slide deck. I've used that analogy, so get used to that.
And Katie's put in something sort of moving away from that health theme around making sure that the community is getting value from it as well. It's not just a check for a check's sake, checking if you're doing things right, alignment to goals.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, and so that's really just helping, like you do with our medical checkups. You might check for deficiencies, anything you need to address, or anything you might need to make some changes, and all that can apply to community of practices as well. So you want your community of practice to be healthy, vibrant, a bit of buzz, enthusiasm. So it all can apply to your community of practices as well, and it's important to check regularly how that's doing and if there's any changes that need to be made. So just moving on to that now about why you might need a health check. So part of it is about keeping relevant and making sure that you're aligned. So the likelihood is that when you first created your community of practice, you maybe had terms of reference, or maybe vision, or some goals, or some purpose about why you wanted to start that community of practice and what you wanted to get out of it. And the members and the environment that you work in is ever evolving, so it's good just to have that bit of a check to see if it's still relevant and it's still valuable. And it kind of helps you make sure that you're not becoming stagnant or losing focus. And a health check can always support continuous improvement as well, so it can help keep up to date, but also identify and address any challenges. So health checks uncover issues, maybe low engagement or ineffective communication, or possibly leadership gaps. And by identifying these challenges early, your community can implement some targeted solutions in order to address them. And then lastly, engagement. So, you know, the main part of your community is the people and your members. So that's where your knowledge sharing and your upskilling happens, and, you know, enriching that knowledge of your community. And a healthy COP is going to attract, you know, members and make them collaborative. The engaged members are going to more likely to collaborate or cross-collaborate on maybe projects or activities. They're going to solve problems together, and which in turn that's going to drive your community forward. But also you want to provide that sense of belonging, make people feel valued and connected. So part of what does the health checks reveal? So I should have said, sorry, at the start, that this presentation is from the perspective of, as heard, we've undertaken and developed a community practice health check assessment that we've undertaken with a number of organisations. So we're going to take you through what that's revealed, how we've done it, what type of things we've found and how we've addressed them. But hoping that you can take some things away from that to apply to your own ones. So some of the things that we'll look at as part of a health check, the main things evaluating your current state, so you can reveal, you know, some critical insights into helping understand your current state, your dynamics, your culture, how active your members are, and also it helps you assess the well-being and effectiveness of your community. But it can also identify where your strengths are, or maybe some areas that need improving or changing as well. So we'll explore a little bit more detail in the next few slides about what's involved in a health check. So we've come up with these 6 categories that you can see on there to kind of diagnose, and we ask a number of questions and we apply some scoring and we make some observations around each of these categories. So the first one's around trust and engagement, so looking at how much trust there is between your members and how active your members are. So we might be looking at things like, does every member of the community contribute to it equally, or is participation and engagement encouraged? And then look at collaboration and learning. So what type of resources and support is in place to do your job effectively, or what are the different ways that you might share knowledge and information within your community. So looking at those resources and ideas and how they're shared. Then there's diversity and inclusion. So how diverse is your community? Are different people, different perspectives and different backgrounds represented? Do the community understand the needs of each members? And do people feel welcomed and respected and valued? Because that's really important as well. Then we've got adaptability and sustainability. So here we're looking at things like, how do you stay up to date with latest developments and best practices in your field? How do you adapt to those changing environment around you, and how do you continually improve as a practice? And then governance and standards, so looking at things like structures and processes that are in place, or, you know, does the community have strong leadership and direction? And then lastly, value and reach. So is the community well connected with other groups or communities? And what extent do you deliver value to people outside of your community as well? So just got an example here of one that we've done with a previous organisation, and it's kind of a visual representation of those categories that we've just went through there. So you can see there's a scoring out of 5. So in this particular example, you can see that they're a bit weaker in things like trust and engagement and governance and standards. And one of the reasons why this particular one scored low on the trust and engagement was about actually how many people just engaged in the actual health check assessment survey to start with. That was a good indication, but also the governance and standards was a bit of an indicator. This was actually quite a large, mature organisation, and you would expect, you know, the structure and the processes to be in place there, which we found there weren't. So that's kind of a visual to show. And also, if you did future health checks on this one, you could also overlay that on here, and it would show the progress of your health checks over time as well, which would be really key. So some of the common things that we've found that have occurred in all of the health checks we've done. So there's just some of these on the left there, and then I'll go through some recommendations of how you might address those, and you might be able to recognise some of these ones. So some of the issues we've found are low engagement, like you've just seen on that previous slide, or unequal input as well from members. So a way that you can address that is really fostering that active engagement, maybe through away days, discussions, events, maybe have some guest speakers, but having some really engaging activities so that it's not just a one-way download, make it something that people can get involved in. It can really help with that engagement. Another thing we've seen is uneven knowledge share from among members, so maybe where you've got multiple teams, some maybe more active than others or more mature than others, but maybe leave some of the other ones behind. So kind of encouraging that regular exchange between teams, or maybe offering either formal or informal mentorship, and some of that peer-to-peer and on-the-job learning as well can really help with that. Another issue is lack of effective leadership or facilitation. Sometimes to help that, you can identify maybe some champions or empower other people to take a lead, and make sure you've kind of got some guidance, some vision, some purpose, some goals that are really visible and accessible to everybody in the community. Another common one is loss of momentum or motivation. There's a lot of enthusiasm there when you first create a community of practice, but over time that can dwindle. And so something to address that can be about establishing a rhythm of activities. So have, regular meetings planned in that people can commit to, and celebrate successes and, really showcase and promote yourselves, but also adapt as needed. So for the example of one that I've set up, I've actually changed it to meeting bi-monthly, because monthly was a bit too frequent, and then people were like, oh, I'll come along, or it doesn't matter if I miss one because I'll get the next one. So sometimes actually making it less frequent can actually make it more desirable as well. So good to keep that in mind. Sometimes people feel that there's a difficulty in quantifying the impact that they have as a community, or feel like the wider organisation or people outside of the community don't really understand the value that they've got to offer. So really you need to kind of showcase and promote that. Don't be scared to shout about yourselves, or let people know about what it is that you're doing and how you can help and have that value proposition. And then lastly, that members, this is a really common one, people don't have time to contribute or to give to the community of practice, or to spend outside of the non-project or non-paid work. And this can be a difficult one because it often tends to be a cultural change, which can take some time and might happen over time. So this is something where people need to have some difficult conversations, perhaps with some project stakeholders, about making that time, or having yourself to carve that time out of your week, to dedicate some time to it. So hopefully you've been able to recognise some of those areas there. So just a little bit about how we kind of diagnose it as HERDS. What we do is we've created a survey, so using Google Forms. It's a series of questions. Some of them are multiple choice, and some of them we allow people to give the free text, and we want their opinion, and we make it anonymous. We found that doing that makes people a lot more honest. Obviously the downfall to that is if you do get any issues that you want to delve deeper into, you don't know where they've come from. But making it anonymous, we found, makes a real difference. So we've got a lot of questions in there, and there's some science behind that with those categories that I showed you before, and the scoring. But what we do is we use a combination of science and art to analyse all these findings, along with some observations, along with some of our experience, and maybe some further conversations. And from that, we're able to produce a health check assessment, which I'm going to show you in a second a bit about what that looks like. And from that, we highlight any strengths that we found, but also maybe some areas that we think need improving. And from that, we develop some recommendations, and we also assess the maturity of the community of practice, and then we put it all in a pack that we're able to present back either to the team or to the senior team, and kind of use this as your baseline. So as someone mentioned in the chat before, you're using it as your baseline, and as you would with your health, have some regular checkups or some yearly checkups, and then you can keep referring to this baseline to see how you're progressing. But then going forward, you would then maybe have an action plan and use your actions as your baseline. But over time, it's really powerful to see how that's the progress is demonstrated. This is just a little snapshot, and you won't be able to see in detail about what our pack looks like when we've provided the playback. So we've got a health check summary. So there's a chart of how mature we think your community practice might be about where you are. We've got the top 5 takeaways from our observations. We've highlighted some of the feedback that have come from your members, where we think the priorities might be, some really positive feedback that we think is really good to, again, be part of showcasing what you're doing, promoting yourselves. We give a detailed all the questions that we asked and all the responses, so to all 30 questions. So you've got that if you want to delve into the detail. We've got the radar chart that we showed you before, so the scoring against those categories, and we do a SWOT analysis, and then lastly we've got the list of recommendations as well to support that. And that basically gives you all the evidence that you might need maybe for decision making or assigning your priorities. So some feedback we've had in the past is that actually it's made them realign their priorities. You know, maybe something like if governance and standards came out quite low, but that wasn't maybe something they were focusing on, it might make them think actually that's something that our community thinks important and we need to spend some more time and resource doing. And it can also help with things like your resource or your recruitment strategies as well, and put things into focus for you. So kind of what next really? You've taken your health assessment, you've evaluated your current state, you understand your gaps. So the next thing is to really just review that assessment, summarise the findings. You probably want to share that report and output with maybe decision makers, wider stakeholders, your community itself. And then from that, like we say, kind of make some priorities. So what are the most critical areas that you think you need to address? And you can use that scoring from the assessment to help do that ranking. You'll then want to develop an action plan off the back of that health check assessment. You know, have some clear steps and some clear, you know, smart, measurable goals that you can undertake, and then allocate some resource to that, whether that's people, money, tools, in order to take that forward and actually implement and execute that action plan, starting with your high priority tasks. And then it's important to have that monitoring and evaluation in place, again, to support that continuous improvement. You know, have some metrics that you can use to track that progress. And lastly, where you want to get to really is a healthy community of practice. So I've just called some things out on screen here about what would that look like. So it would be high engagement. You would have, you know, active members that would participate regularly in discussions, knowledge sharing, collaborating on projects. You know, you'd have high attendance at your meetings, you know, be well attended and engaging. You'd have effective knowledge sharing in place. So, you know, information would be flowing freely through members. There'd be that kind of culture where people are sharing information and then having it documented, which is key. There'd be strong leadership and there'd be, you know, some clearly defined roles and succession planning in place. And it'd be a really inclusive environment. And then it'd be sustainable, so you'd have clear visions and goals of where you want to get to and some ongoing activities of how you're going to get there as well. There'd be diversity and inclusion, so your community would be really diverse, it would be welcoming, it would be representative of different perspectives and backgrounds, and you're putting that effort in really to make sure that everyone has a voice and everyone feels valued. There'd be measurable impact, so you could demonstrate through some tangible outcomes how you've made an impact and how you've maybe done that professionally and personally, and you'd be able to measure that over time and communicate that to team members and wider stakeholders. And lastly, you'd have that continuous improvement in place. You'd have regular health checks and using feedback from people to enhance ways that you can improve as well. So got some time, so just key to know in the chat as well if how you think on those categories on the screen. If you think about a bit of reflection on your own community of practice at the moment, how many of those do you think, maybe what do you think are your strengths and which do you think are your weaknesses? So you can either put it in the chat or happy to have a discussion just to see some key ones that are coming through at the moment.
I don't mind being brave and talking, unless you prefer them in the chat.
No, let's talk away. Thank you very much.
I think that, and maybe this is shared by a lot of people, the engagement and time is the really challenging one for us, and I'd be interested to know any success stories for increasing that engagement or having the tough conversations at senior levels to say we need time aside to actually have the whole team focusing on this stuff.
Yes, so I think the last one that we did, that one came out that it was people being actively encouraged to participate, but they just didn't have the time, so they were kind of almost in conflict with each other. But we actually did the away day as a result. So we did the health check as a result of an away day that we've done with the team. And the feedback that had come back on that health check is that they wanted more of those away days. They really enjoyed that this particular organisation had offices all over the UK, and they'd all met together, and they found that really beneficial to talk to some people that they maybe hadn't talked to before. So the leaders took away that they needed to do some more of that in-person events. And again, it was about giving it to the community to suggest topics to suggest at these events, rather than having it as a one-way download from the leaders. You know, make it people suggest topics that they're interested in, and maybe ask people to come forward to volunteer to lead on those topics. So it's not the same people that's talking all the time. It's kind of sharing that engagement throughout the different members. Find out what it is that they actually want to hear about, rather than what it is that you think they want to know. And yeah, I think the other part that you asked about was making that time. Like you say, it is difficult, because at the end of the day, people have got, you know, targets to meet and projects to deliver, etc. So even if it's just, you know, 1 hour a week that you could put in your calendar to focus on either your, you know, your personal development, or you know, some ideas for increasing your community, even just, you know, try and get that hour and having that conversation and showing the benefit of that, you know, how the benefit of being collaborative and having that knowledge sharing and doing that upskilling. If you can put a business case really together to show how effective that is, and do a bit of a cost benefit really analysis to say, if you allow me this 1 hour, these are the type of things that we can be doing, and these are where the improvements could be made.
Thanks, Sinead.
Anyone else recognise anything on there that's either maybe an area that they could improve in, or something that they're really strong on at the moment? The guidance, governance and standards tends to come up quite a lot. I think it's something at the start of a practice. You've got quite clear processes and a vision, but I think that's something that loses momentum quite quickly, and especially as new people join, they maybe don't even know that those type of documents or visions or roadmaps exist. So I think it's something that dwindles over time. You know, it's something that you make sure is in place, but then everyone's like, oh, I didn't know that existed, or I don't know where, I couldn't go and find it if you ask me. So I think that's a common one that kind of is there to start with, but probably yeah, kind of disappears, and you need to make sure that not everyone's on the same page about whether they have an agreed vision and purpose.
I think speaking broadly from a few that I've seen, I think effective knowledge sharing seems to be done quite well quite often. But on the flip side, I think the sustainability can sometimes be challenging, and, you know, having the right people drive it forward, and then, like you say, if some people drop out, having you know, just keeping that momentum. I've seen that be challenging, but yeah, effective knowledge sharing is probably the one that I see do well most often.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Patrick. And I think there's a lot of variation in how that can be done as well. It might be something that's not necessarily documented, isn't it? Which, as people leave and people join, that it's not always, like you say, sustainable. It might just be that you see it in the office or on, you know, Slack or Teams, for example, but maybe it's not something that's documented for everybody. And I think that's where that unequal knowledge sharing comes in sometimes. Brilliant. Dan, I'm going to pick on you, because Dan's from Herd, but he previously has actually been on the other side of it. So we conducted a health check with him while he was at University of Cambridge. Would you like to just maybe give a bit of your insight into being on the other side of it, of having a health check done, and what you think was helpful?
Yeah, sure. Put me on the spot. I think it was I think one thing that struck me about it as particularly useful is that, so the COP in this instance for our check was the BA team at the University of Cambridge, and it felt like a bit like you were doing a guitar lesson for a bunch of guitar players right at first, right? I was thinking, well, this better be good, because we're a bunch of BAs and we're going to be poring over all of the detail, and we're going to be thinking about, we're going to be asking you all about the methodology and how you've done it. And I remember that this approach is like allows for that and allows for people to be interested in like diving down into the finer detail. Like you said, you provide all the reports at the end, and so BAs can sort of check for themselves if they want, like what your especially when some of the results are sometimes not what the community might think it would be, right? I think as well that for me the thing that really stuck out in these characteristics was sustainability, in that, I mean, we couldn't do much to help because we were a BA team rather than, you know, like a group of people coming together sort of voluntarily. That wasn't voluntary, that was our job, right? But it did make me think about how until we're made to think about sustainability, particularly about like inclusivity and like helping people and being welcoming and engaging, you just don't really think about it explicitly. You just think, well, the format must be working because some people are engaging. And it helped us think more about like, well, what can we do to make other people engage more? Or what can we do when we want to start, you know, expanding and involving other people? What can we do to make it easy for them to get involved? Yeah, those are the things that stood out for them.
Ian, thank you for sharing, Dan. Perhaps I'll just do a quick recap of what we've covered. So I explored kind of the importance of conducting health checks for your community of practices, and just like we said, you know, at the start, that just like regular medical checkups keep us healthy, these kind of assessments and checks ensure that your community of practices remains healthy and relevant and resilient as well. So I think somebody actually mentioned it before about checking the pulse, and the pulse, so learning how to actually diagnose and evaluate your current state and identify where those strengths are and where those areas for improvement and focus are. We looked at the vital signs, and we looked at some of the common issues and pitfalls that some of the other organisations have suffered, but we also looked at the remedies and of how you can address any of those and put some actions in place. And then we just talked at the end there about the importance of that regular assessments. Like I said at the start, it can be really active, really engaging, you've got everything documented, but just, you know, naturally as things evolve and the people change that are in your community, it can decline. So it's important to continually assess and continue that alignment and relevance to ensure that you stay up to date in this environment. So thank you everybody for your participation and listening. This, like we say, has been recorded, so if you want to share it with any colleagues or family or friends, whoever you like, it's going to be available on our YouTube channel within a few days. We'll announce it on our LinkedIn page when that's ready, so give us a follow on there if you don't. If you want any further questions or advice, or to have a chat about health checks or anything else we've mentioned, feel free to get in touch with myself or with Rich. Our details are on the screen, or connect with us either individually on LinkedIn, or make sure you follow our Heard page. As part of Leeds Digital, we are running some further sessions this week. So Dan's got one tomorrow about implementing big ERP systems. Then we've also got one about when digital ideas go wrong, and one about continuous improvement as well. And we've got a bit more time for any more questions or discussion, if anyone would like to discuss anything any further on community practices.
I'm sure you get asked this all the time, Sinead, but is there any chance we could get the slide pack shared out?
I think so. Is that okay, Jamie? Okay, see. Check with them.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll add it to the YouTube description in a file link, so people can, if they're looking at it on YouTube, they can access the slides as well.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, feel free to put in the chat or shout out if you've got any further questions or any other things that you might have found on previous health checks that you'd be interested in, or if anyone, I know I'm going to put Derek on the spot. I know Derek's been tasked with quite a big job for doing a worldwide community of practice for all of his teams, which I know is going to be.
I was going to ask you about that, Sinead. Yeah, what's your experience of dealing with communities that span countries? So we've got BAs in Australia, in Saudi, and lots of different parts of the world. So how do you bring those people together effectively?
Yeah, no, good question. So I've not done worldwide before, but the North latest one we did have them spread out across the UK. And I think, again, it comes down to how that knowledge sharing and how you share information, and having a bit of consistency and standards. So maybe if you've got a SharePoint page or Slack or Teams or somewhere, some repository where you people can go to find out things like your vision and your goals and your contact information, and make sure that you have things publicised, like where you're meeting, how often you're meeting. Obviously make that inclusive. If you are worldwide, I'm sure you're going to have a challenge about time zones, so you maybe have to alternate, maybe one early morning, one late evening, and kind of make it accessible to everybody. That's going to be going to be a bit of a challenge for your time zone, I imagine. But making sure, accessible by people, that people know about it. I think sometimes there can be assumptions that everyone knows to go and find the value and mission here, or you may find that doesn't exist. So maybe the first point of call is actually to document some of you, maybe have a bit of a workshop. Probably we're virtual, I assume in your case, Derek, unless you're going to have some kind of world meet somewhere, but just have a bit of a brainstorming and get everybody's input into it. Like I said before, make sure everyone's voice is heard. So what do they want from this community? What is the purpose? Let's make sure we've got everyone's input into that, and probably maybe take some responsibility, rotate it around the different teams, to come up with maybe hosting, if it's monthly or however frequent you decide to meet. What type of things do people want to hear about? Like you say, do that assessment on what we think your strengths and weaknesses are as a community. So I think just being really collaborative and transparent and giving everyone a voice, and probably just coming up with the best way to actually communicate. It's going to be your first port of call, and then somewhere that everyone can contribute to and have a bit of a guiding star, I would think, to whether that's SharePoint or your intranet or whatever that might be. But good luck with that. I'm interested to hear how that goes, Derek. We've got a few hands up. What to see? Ben?
Ben's up first, and then we've got Patrick.
Thank you.
Yeah. So just interested in your thoughts on how you strike the balance between the risk of preaching to the converted within a community of practice versus propagating value to a kind of the audience and the reach beyond the community.
Yes, I think maybe just like doing a bit of a poll probably be interesting to know. Like I say, you don't want to have that assumptions in there when you're saying preaching to the converted. Sometimes there can be assumptions that everyone knows why we're here, why we exist, what is it that we're doing. So I think having that maybe putting that, the feelers out there to say, maybe even just every 3 months, a bit of a pulse check to say, maybe some set questions that you could ask to see how people, bit of a test really. What do you think our vision is? Do you know where to find it? What is our purpose? And seeing how that changes and if everybody's on the same page. And like I mentioned, Derek, having those kind of workshops and collaborative sessions where everyone can come together to see if there is difference of opinion in there. Something that we found a lot is that it is often, when we've asked obviously multiple choice question about whether you agree, disagree, etc., there tends to be a lot of variation about things being agreed purpose and goals and that type of thing. So I think you just need to find out, put a stake in the ground, what if everyone does agree on what that is and if they're aware of it. But I think it's about having it not just about communicating within your community, but making sure that people outside of your community, whether that's your team, whether it's in an organisation or not, do other people. And maybe, because another thing we can do with these health checks is we have 3 versions. We have one for the actual community itself, then we have one for leaders, and then we have one for external stakeholders. So the one we did with the University of Cambridge with Dan, we did all 3, so you're able to get a perspective from people that are actually your customers that you provide, that you communicate with, and maybe provide that value to, and actually get some feedback from them as well, so you can get that perspective externally as well as internally.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
We've got, I think, Patrick, you're up next, and then James, your hands after Patrick.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks. I think I speak for everyone. I say that was brilliant. So thank you very much. Just wondering if you've seen other applications for that, I guess, framework in terms of, so I was thinking maybe for like individual teams, some of the points there might be a little bit impractical for individual teams, but is there like a trimmed down version or an adapted version that you've thought about or got or anything like that?
Yeah, I've not seen, like I said, it's something we've developed ourselves just through, like, say, a Google Forms questionnaire with 30 questions, and then we've done a lot of things in the background to analyse and do that data and information analysis. But Derek, I think I'm going to pick on you again. I think we made a chat a couple of weeks ago. You've done a bit of a questionnaire internally as well, and I know I've done it previously as well, where it's just literally been a SharePoint questionnaire. But I think the other tools, it's whether you can make it anonymous or not is sometimes a bit of an issue, because people often feel, especially if it's a small team, they don't want to be honest, or they don't want to participate because they feel like they're going to be obvious, you know, that they're going to get picked on or something. So I think if you can try and make it anonymous, that's better. But yeah, we've used things like SharePoint surveys in the past. You can just use, obviously, like the monkey surveys and things, but it depends on that quality of the data and how you can manipulate it. I think when it after you've got your results, and I think it's important that you can make it repeatable as well for those regular checks. You need to make sure you're asking the same questions. But Derek, have you got anything to add to that one from the one you've done recently with your, I think yours was SharePoint, wasn't it, survey?
Yeah, it was more of a maturity assessment, ours, but yeah, similar.
James?
Hi, it's kind of the opposite of a previous question, really, but what's your experience and particular challenges you'd see when the community of practice is a very small group of people, so hard getting into double figures in terms of individuals, and feels hard to get the engagement where a single person having a day off can kind of destroy your stats and things. So what's your kind of thoughts on that one?
It's when we've dealt with larger communities, do you mean?
Small, no, in terms of smaller ones, yeah.
Yeah, no, so most of the ones that we've done have actually been probably about teams of maybe 15 or so, but the last one we did was around over 100. So we've done an experience of both. I think, yeah, we've found that engagement tends to be low when it's smaller, and I think it's like down to that point about you are less anonymous when if you've only got 10 people and, you know, 9 people agree and 1 doesn't, you can probably all guess normally who that one person is, I think. So I think that, yeah, the smaller it is, you may find that engagement for undertaking the assessment does suffer a little bit, because I think people do feel like there might be you know, identified if they didn't want to be honest with some feedback. But I think maybe it's just thinking a bit differently. It's not done necessarily have to be a questionnaire that you could do. You could maybe just ask people for topics, or, you know, what would you like to, or activities that you'd like to do. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a full-on assessment. But I think if you think there is any issue, if you've already got maybe issues that you think need to be addressed, it's maybe giving that ownership over to the community, rather than maybe as a leader saying, right, we need to look at this. I think it's giving that ownership and that facilitation maybe to other champions in the team, and maybe that way sometimes people are more likely to come forward with feedback as well, potentially. And kind of, yeah, giving up the hierarchy sometimes can help.
Okay, thank you.
And Franco?
Hi, yeah, and assuming that most of us are business analysts, I don't know if all of us are business analysts or if this is specific to BAs, but I'm a business analyst. James is also a business analyst, or the head of BAs at MBS. How, in terms of the membership of a community of practice, you know, is it generally limited to members of that function, or are there connected functions that also might be members of the community of practice? So again, take the business analysts, product owners, test teams, scrum masters. Be interested to see your experience here about how wide the community of practice is for that function. Is it just in the function, or is it kind of like linked functions as well that are part of it?
Yeah, no, it can be, like I said at the start, anybody who's got a shared interest. So we've tended to do it with business analysis teams, but it can be replicated across product and other teams. So the ones that we've done for BA practices, but there may be more than one team. If it's quite a large organisation, there might be other teams that support, that may have BAs within them, but then maybe like have other adjacent capabilities as part of that as well. So I don't think you have to limit it to, it has to be solely to one profession or one role. I think it's where you've got, as long as you can knowledge share and learn from each other, So for example, the one I've got for is a BA community, but I know there's other people, like you say, project managers, product testing, that either work with you or in your outputs or their inputs, etc. So as long as you can still learn from each other and it's relevant, I don't think you need to limit it to one profession. I think it depends again what the purpose of your community. If it's knowledge sharing and learning, then the wider you go, that might get watered down a little bit and be less focused. So I think you just need to keep in mind what it is that you want to get out of that community practice, and then how relevant would it be to wider roles, I think. Couple more hands, Lauren.
Morning. Thank you for that. It's been really interesting. I come from more of a delivery project management background. I was just wondering if you had anything of like a topic generation kind of thing, or something that would generate topics, because that's where I find people struggle to come up with what to address, or they don't feel that they're well versed enough in one area. And I suppose just encouraging people that it doesn't have to be a full presentation, it could be just sharing small bits.
Yeah, so just personally, when I've done that, the Cumbrian BA one, we started off with a poll asking people like the top 3 things that you want to know, whether that's a new skill you want to learn, or maybe AI is always a common one, so maybe the latest trends in the industry. So I think, yeah, if you can do it as free text to people and asking what's your top 3 things you'd like to learn. From the health check itself, it asks things like, what's your priorities for your community practice? So then you would look at everyone's responses. Obviously, the more you've got, that gives you that data to be able to say, 33% want this, 50% are asking for this. So that would give you more of an indication. But I think, just asking, surveying your group to find out what it is they'd like. Or if you're not getting much response that way, like you say, you could come up with some suggestions that you think, like even just things we surveyed on, like, how would you like to meet? Do you want to meet on Teams? Do you want to meet virtually? Do you want to meet in person? How many people would be interested in doing, a social after work and that type of thing? So I would think either you can come up with suggestions, or if it is better if they come up with them, because then you know what type of things they're interested in. The only issue is if 10 people come up with 10 different things, then you're going to have to see about how you're going to rotate that. But it's always good to do if someone can come with something that they've got a passion for or an interest in. And like you say, it doesn't have to be a full-on 40-minute presentation. It might just be, some experience that they've had, or a case study or something like that. I think, to answer your question, I haven't got a tool as such. I think it is just surveying, and if it comes from somebody that tends to be that they've maybe got a passion for it, or some experience that they want to share.
Cheers, thank you.
Patrick, probably last one for Patrick, just considering the time.
Thank you. Just to give an example to Franco's question before, so I'm not a business analyst anymore, but I was for 3 or 4 years. So everywhere I've been since then, I've always, been a part of the business analyst community of practice. I'm definitely rusty in some areas, but I think that I'd like to think there's a bit of value going both ways, and I certainly get a lot out of those sessions and try and contribute as well. So that's worked really well. And I've joined some other communities as well, so maybe that's just me being nosy.
Thank you, Patrick.
Good point. Yeah, just sort of a totally random one, actually. I'm part of a community I got married in Malta, so I'm part of this Malta brides community. So at the time when I was planning my wedding, I was getting information from people, but now I'm able to offer that back because I've experienced it. So I often get asked, questions about things. And I think that's a good point, Patrick, that you can use your past experience on things as well. It doesn't always have to be something that you're doing right now. So that's quite a good point. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks all very much. We've met time, so thanks all for your participation. And like I say, I hope you found that useful. So it'll be available, the slides will be available, and the video will be available if you want to watch again or share with anybody. And just thank you. Hope you found it good. Take care.